Session to order. Mr. Robson, will you please call the roll?
Dr. DeMarco.
Here.
Mr. Eckenrode.
Here.
Mrs. Parkowski.
Here.
Mrs. Tomasz.
Here.
And Mrs. Newman.
Here. Please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. If you're joining us virtually, welcome to our meeting. We have a relatively light agenda tonight, and we will be going into executive session later. And I don't anticipate the board taking any further action after executive session. At this time, we'll recognize any guests in attendance that would like to address the board. I don't believe that we have anyone tonight that is interested. We have no form filled out. So we'll just move straight to board discussion and action. We do need to take action on our first reading of attached board policies. And so at this time, I will take a motion from the board for the approval of the first reading of the attached board policies.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion on any of the items?
There were a few questions, and I know that I sent some emails about that, but just to let you guys know, Mrs. Parkowski brought up policy 2431, which is the interscholastic athletics, and that was a good catch because what I didn't do is I didn't check the one that said may have received a failing grade in a course. The way that it works generally is that you need to pass 4 out of 5, I believe, that you take. And so there's the GPA that's there, and then there's the section that needs to be checked that says may have received a failing grade in a course. So that is 2431. There was a question about 551702. And did you get the, I know I've sent quite a few correspondence to you guys this week, but there was one that provides an overview and highlight of all the different policies. And I think, as we try to expedite the process, it would be that I would send you the policies with whatever modifications that are recommended by the treasurer, myself, or any of the administrators, and then we would give you the that overview that I think does a pretty good job of why it is the way that it is. And now that I think about it, it probably would have answered the question that I think that you have and others had too, and that's why, okay, well, that's smart, so we'll try to do more smart things like that. So that's the reason why the 551702 is removed, because it's replaced with the very comprehensive 2266. And 2266 has like a lot of administrative procedural things that we're going to need to do that we'll get legal advice on, and that we're going to have to train others as well. If you took a look at that one, there's a lot that's in there as far as who's the coordinator, who's the investigator, and all those different kinds of things. So we're working on that one, James and I, and Kelly's part of that as well, because what you do is you have a male and a female coordinator. Okay? So I think at the end, ultimately, I think I'm the decision maker if it comes down for any appeal or anything like that, but then there's the coordinator, and then the investigators are generally the building principals who are part of that, unless, of course, they're involved with any kind of claim themselves, and then they obviously couldn't do that. I think that those were the majority of the questions, I think. What we're going to try to do is to start to get up to date. There are some, I think, they're going to come out of Brett's office moving forward, and I looked at another round of policies today and gave them to Debbie. So as this goes at the next board meeting for the second reading and ultimately the approval, you'll get the first reading of the other ones as well. And I'll give you that same summary sheet that comes from the YOLA that describes what they're about. Okay? I appreciate the questions in advance too. It doesn't mean you obviously can't ask questions, at the meeting. It's just it may be a little bit, you may not get the answer right away, that's all.
I would recommend that if the board does have questions, maybe like, there should be a cutoff time, you know? It's hard if we ask questions like the day before that we're, you know, so maybe if we could do it.
That
you
would be
know,
nice, but that in some cases is just not realistic for me.
Right.
I was lucky to get them read like Tuesday.
Yeah, and I know that, it's ultimately, it's the board's call,
try to
but
do it
right.
I'm okay with that. And
Okay.
I think that we're able to
I'm
make
just
it
thinking
work.
about you guys, like, trying to.
We just
answer
may have
questions
to
at the
ask you
last
for
minute.
more time if it's a
Yeah.
question that we have to
Okay.
actually contact somebody else about, and so we may not be able to answer it,
And I don't think most of them were like, I'm going to vote no on it. It was
No,
just for
no.
clarification.
Yeah,
purposes.
absolutely.
This is my first real rodeo at going around and actually getting a chance to review them.
Oh, yeah.
And
No,
I
you'll
feel
have
like,
There's going to be a lot of rides, that's for sure.
yay!
You know?
Okay, is there any other discussion or questions on the policies before we vote? Mr. Robson, will you please call the roll?
Dr. DeMarco?
Yes.
Mr. Eckenrode?
Yes.
Mrs. Parkowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Tomasz?
Yes.
And Mrs. Newman?
Yes, motion carries. So if it's okay with the board, I thought that we would jumble a little bit of the next items for discussion. I thought we would discuss bus acquisition first, then field turf initiative, and then onboarding needs of newer board members, if the board is okay with that. Okay, so we will engage in discussion on bus acquisition. And Brett, I think that's something you wanted to talk to us about.
So I put out in the report on Friday, the discussion that Tim and Heath and Jim and I had on the bus fleet, some opportunities that were available to us for grant money, which is extremely helpful. But the fear of if we don't act and get those ordered here soon, we'll lose that funding. So you have the ODE that has committed roughly $40,000 to us. And then Heath had worked on a grant with the EPA for clean diesel buses. That's about $97,000. It's a match grant. We would supply 97 of that also. And then the other half of the bus from ODE. So looking through some literature, I see that maybe some communication was out there that we're going to forego some buses perhaps, or delay that, but maybe that was for last year. So I just wanted to talk to you guys and make sure you're good with us moving forward on that. I think it's a great opportunity. I'd hate to miss out on those kind of dollars. And I think the manner in which we acquire those is important to us as well. Rather than dropping $152,000 out of the general fund today, we can work with Key Bank on a master lease purchase arrangement, spread that out over 5 years, and it goes from $152,000 at one time to about $32,000 a year over the life of that term. So I think that would help us.
And that'll be 5 years.
That's 5 years.
And you could pay that if you wanted, the board wanted to, they could take that from the PI levy if we wanted to.
You could,
Okay.
yeah. That's another option.
I'm trying to remember if there's anything currently sitting in capital outlay in the general fund that's earmarked for a bus purchase. And I think there might be, but I don't know
Okay.
off the top of my head.
Okay, and not that I saw, but again, I haven't
Yeah,
really.
no, I understand you didn't make the forecast, right?
Yeah,
I get it.
yeah. There's not, a substantial amount of money in that PI fund
Yeah.
today. And I know we've got a variety of other projects coming down the road or that we're talking about for the summer and so on. So I thought we might better use that towards those items.
Well, I think this is the first time we've ever explored an option like that, so.
It's a nice way to a little more quickly update your fleet. I think Tim mentioned he had 3 buses this year that were placed out of commission by the state. So we've got an aging fleet out there. The influx of 3 new ones would help that quite a bit. And I think we need to get back in that, that rotation of keeping the fleet a little more current as we go on. So we can add to that schedule if we'd like, or we can at some point get back into that full purchase option as well. I'm somewhat optimistic that the state is going to continue that, that assistance in the short run anyway. But they haven't announced that for next year yet.
Back in '99, we did exercise a lease purchase.
Oh, okay.
And we purchased 3 buses that way. So it has been done before.
Okay, thanks, Tim.
And it's nice too, if you're only doing one, maybe two a year, and you get to that point where one drops off, one gets added back on. So you're kind of, you even out that outlay a bit as well too. There is a cost to that, over the 5-year period for these 3 buses, you're looking at $9,000 or $10,000 in interest cost, and it does cost you a little bit more in the end. But I'd rather pay that and have a little bit extra cash on hand today than not.
That's in total.
Yes, yes.
Well, with the amount of years that we operate buses, that kind of gets zeroed out.
And I think the life that you get out of your fleet's extraordinary, to be honest with you. And your bodies are probably given away sooner than the mechanicals are. But even at that, what did you tell me you're getting, 13, 15 years or more?
More, 20.
20.
Because that's
That,
like the
I think
rotation. You get
that's-
one new, but it's better last for 20 years.
Yeah,
That's incredible. I think 12 to 13 is kind of a standard.
Our biggest issues have been in frame-related
Yep,
type
it's been
issues.
rusting.
Body-wise, we can repair that and so forth, but frame, you can't touch them. That's the problem.
Yeah, so they're doing a nice job in keeping those buses on the road and for an extended period of time. So if you'd like, we can pursue that. We can talk further about cash versus finance. Yeah, that's okay. But I think the main thing that we want to get tonight is that okay to, let's go ahead and pursue the acquisition of these 3 buses and take advantage of those grant monies that are out there. Today.
Yeah, I personally don't want to lose any grant opportunities that are out there.
No, that's a lot of money. That's a full bus.
Yeah.
Add it all together.
The one last thing that I would like to contribute is that, Heath contacted Cardinal Bus Sales down in Lima, Ohio, and the numbers were based on the 2020 bid with the OSC, and they're honoring those 2020 prices for these buses. So that's another reason why we want to jump on this, because it's very rare not to see increases in cost from year to year on bids, so.
So we participate in the bid process with the Ohio School Council, and that was conducted. As a matter of fact, we were just notified of the one that's getting ready to start now for next year. So we don't have to go through that again, and that's going to save you, 45 to 60 days anyway on starting the build.
So would we see that on, for vote, or not vote? No, we're just,
Right,
yep,
right.
okay.
Now what, if we come back, and this would be my recommendation for the next regular meeting, is the motion to lease the units. With that, there's a formal resolution we would pass, and then a variety of documents from KeyBank and Squire that goes along with that as well, and we can take care of all that. You would essentially direct Jim and I to take care of that in the resolution.
Is the board in approval of all this?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah,
Good. Okay.
yep, we're good to go. Any other questions? Okay, yep. Great. Jody, did you have one? Oh, I'm sorry.
You're questioning
I'm thinking.
look.
That's my thinking look.
All right.
Well, certainly, the ideal is not to have to, lease it, but, I mean, where we're at now, cash-wise, it seems the prudent thing to do, and we can't ignore the fleet, so, yeah. Okay, great. Okay, field turf initiative. Jim, are you
Yeah, so
ready to
I'm
lead the
going to
charge on
start
that?
with that, to have kind of discussion with you guys, and Brett is going to, I think, color commentate and add some things because he's been involved with all these discussions. You've gotten a couple different emails from me that sort of have like a chronology of how things went down. After Joe Singleton came and talked to the board, there was, what are we going to do next? He followed up in an email to the board, and then the response to that was that Brett and I would sit down and talk with Joe about what it is that he presented and kind of moving forward. So that meeting happened on the 29th. And, the main thing there really was, what's the totality of the cost? What is the ask, I guess, from essentially the school district? And then what resources might be out there that are currently kind of earmarked or have been earmarked as it relates to, to putting turf in the field. And then I have some other things that I'll add too. But from what I've been able to ascertain, the ask really, I think, are two things. Or first, the resources that come from the general fund that go towards the maintenance of the current grass football field, outside of that labor cost, but really all the other kinds of things, the contract, the materials and things. The ask is that would be reinvested, that $20,000, essentially a $20,000 annual amount would be earmarked then to go into this $340,000 that's there, that's left, that needs to be funded. And then after that, the request is, okay, can the school district look at whatever that residual amount is and look to work with the turf company or our own finance group, and that's where Brett would come in, to pay that off over time. And essentially what that would be is not money coming really from the general fund, but any resources that are going to be staggered in by way of advertisement in alternative forms of revenue dollars over the course of whatever that may happen to be. Now, there are some good things in this as well, because we found out that several of the turf companies that the committee has been talking to are on kind of like the already bidded kind of Ohio Schools Council list, which means that you don't have to go out for a bid process because they're already pre-approved. So there's that, I think, which is a good thing. And also, coupled with the conversation that Joe and I had with Al Mattis from Southwest General as well, that I think that is a large, that's got a lot of potential. We're supposed to hear back from Southwest Hospital as far as what they're able to do. That to me is really just, it's a huge amount, but it's additional decorations on the cake, so to speak. For me, that's not like, the linchpin that if that doesn't happen, at least in the superintendent's mind, if that doesn't happen, that this doesn't happen, that would be, it would just give you more cash in hand, and it would pay things off, I think, in a quicker time. In addition to that, this is, again, good news. I don't know if you guys know who Dan Martin is, but Dan is a great guy. He's an Olmsted Falls alum, very active with the Alumni Association. He is a Strongsville resident and was, I think, president of their athletic boosters for quite some time, and he is the vice president of marketing for UPS. He also happens to be on the Alumni Association, and I arranged it, because I've talked to Dan just over the years on a number of different things, just to pick his brain, because if we had like Dan, he's raised with, coupling with some of the administrators and others over at Strongsville, like millions. I mean, millions and millions of dollars that he's gotten. There's a lot more businesses in Strongsville, but there's a lot of people who live in Olmsted Falls that shop in Strongsville as well. And so there was at one particular point in time that Dan was very well, and still is, connected with the economic developer in Strongsville, and essentially got, here's a list of people that you need to speak with if you're going to go and look for alternative forms of revenue and advertising. And it was Caliber Home Mortgage, and it was all these different people. So Dan has that list, and Dan talked with Joe and I. Dan has since retired in his role in Strongsville. He's kind of a free agent now. And so we've asked Dan if he was going to help, if he could be willing to help us, not only with just the contacts, but maybe some of the other things as well. So he's given us some of those contacts, some that right out of the gate I think could help with, we could get a car. I mean, for instance, Strongsville's athletic boosters get 5 donated cars from Serpentini every year and donate them, and they get probably, $300,000-$400,000 annually from things like that. There's no reason why Olmsted Falls can't have that either. It really is just a market that needs to be kind of looked into, tested, or a field that needs to be plowed, whatever metaphor you want to use. I think that it's, that it's out there and there are people that are willing to do that. There's another group, those that own the Culvers, which I didn't even really know what that was. They live in Olmsted Falls and they're already donating money to Strongsville. Dan knows them because he helped to broker that deal. And so we're going to talk to them as well. I think Strongsville's got $10,000 over a 5-year span regarding that. If you remember, we got a good amount of money, $200,000 for Vitamix, and then the others were like $4,000 for $9,000. Nowhere near what Dan Martin and Strongsville and those other folks are getting. He is very experienced at this, and I learned an awful lot by talking to him. And he's also very passionate about Olmsted Falls Schools because he's an alumni. Did he graduate whenever you graduated?
I think he graduated in 81,
Okay,
so close to me.
yeah. But he knows a lot of the
Yeah,
alumni.
he does, he's
A
extremely
lot of the alumni from
connected.
Olmsted Falls have gone on and they own like these businesses. There's another one that owns like a ginormous pool company and a few other different things that he's already spoke to, and they've given money to like Strongsville. So,
Probably because we never, because
well, we
probably
never
the
really
Falls
did
have
this,
never
right?
really
I know
asked,
that, I know
right?
that. I mean, it's a huge untapped market. So
Yeah.
I guess, that's my long-winded thing for a few different things. First, I'm going to offer you my opinion without you asking for it, but I believe that it's in the best interest of the students of Olmsted Falls in kindergarten through 12th grade that the board strongly consider the recommendation that Joe, or the data that Joe gave you, along with the potential that these other different things have. And I'm going to defer to you in a second, Brett, to talk about some of the other questions that financially they came up with. But I think that there's a huge opportunity to gather additional resources that could help push this way over the finish line and also help with any kind of returfing down the road, because that's that's what will happen. This is our facility, we own the facility, the board owns, the school district owns the facility. And returfing it is going to cost $400,000. If a district can't figure out how to save $400,000 over 10 years, 12 years, then it's got a problem. I mean, we should be able to do that. And in fact, honestly, once the scoreboard is paid off, you're going to get additional revenue that's coming in from that. You're going to get additional field naming rights, along with potentially other things related to a Southwest deal that is more advertising that we just didn't really look into before. What we don't want, what I don't want, and I'm guessing you don't want either, is to turn into like NASCAR, where everything is like sponsored and they're all over the place.
Why not?
But, well, I mean, I think we need to have some taste with it as well, and I think we can make it look very nice, and not have it necessarily look like that, but we can sponsor just about everything. So, personally, I mean, now that we're hopefully moving past this COVID thing, I mean, I'm spending some of my time to try to gather additional resources to help finance things. And I have two very skilled people, one who's extremely skilled at doing this and has a track record of getting millions of dollars, and is an ally and will help. So there were questions that the board had, there were questions that others had, and so Brett contacted Brian Callender from Squires and kind of asked him some questions too. So I don't know if there's anything that you wanted to add.
Just the recap with the conversation with Ryan, I think his number one concern when I was talking timelines to him was the bid process. And when I shared with them that OSC already had 3 of the providers on their approved list, you could just hear a huge sigh of relief from his end. So really what we're looking at then is that determination of what amount is it that we need to front or finance for the group, and then just that display of how is that going to be paid back over time. So in running some of the numbers that I had here, I took what Vitamix gives today, and what we get off of some of those ads. I think I took 75%, Jim, of that. What I didn't include in until you just mentioned it, so I'm going to need to rerun it, is paying off that scoreboard. I need to factor that in here as well. But if we finance that for a 10-year period, you're looking at roughly a payment of just under $47,000, or I'm sorry, slightly over $47,000. Our current cash inflow is about $47,000, Jim mentioned a couple, the hot donors that may be out there, if we can get them nailed down. That could factor into your 10-year savings on the replacement fuel as well. I think we can combine that all into one model, one approach. That way it's just not, here, let's get the field in today and we'll worry about the replacement down the road. But this is going to have that built into it as well.
So I'm sorry to interrupt you, Brock. So roughly a 47,000 payment, what's the number that we're financing off of that? Is
Okay,
it
so, okay.
340K?
Right. So I kind of tweaked Joe's numbers a little bit. I thought maybe they were slightly conservative in some areas. So I put a total project cost of $725. 321 had a $100,000 donation with that. There are factored into his presentation donations in kind for excavating and stone and some concrete curbing around there. And then the application of the Vitamix donations that we've received to date. So I'm looking at about $365.
So what, can you just kind of go through how you get there? So it's
Yes.
725 total.
Yeah. There we go. Thank you.
We'll maybe pass those.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I love handouts.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I'll give you the
Am I short? We're good? Okay. So, yeah, so Joe had a range, and I think in his presentation, it was roughly 700, and so I just kind of bumped that to the 725 end of that. And you'll see the 321 donation of $100,000. The donate, yes,
Stop there, because his presentation, I thought they had 75.
75, and then when we met with him on Friday, I think later on in that presentation, he indicated that another 25,000 would be available, and he said on
Yeah.
Friday, that's the amount that they were prepared
Yeah. He did say
to
that.
provide. Yep.
Thanks.
The 200 from Vitamix, and then the 60 we've already received. I'm sorry,
The
the
200 in
200
kind.
of the donations in kind, and then 60 from Vitamix is where I came with the 365. Okay. And I just looked at the future, the annual cash flow, just with what we have in place today. So 20,000 a year from Vitamix, and 75% of those current ads that we have out there for $47,000. Working with Key Bank the last couple of days, they sent me some scenarios, which takes me to the upper right on your page there. So 10 years at 2.25, 47,698. Our current cash flow coming in from those two other, from Vitamix and your ads was 47,000. So just on an annual basis for the payment, we're short $698, roughly, but we're going to be awful close to that. Then the remainder there on the left, I'm kind of looking at the replacement cost down the road. So we have some savings out there, and I dropped that down a little bit. Fertilizer and paint that we put on the grass fields today at 16,000, and then I bumped up the cost. I think Joe had 1,500 a year for maintenance on the turf field and some disinfecting that goes with that. So I looked at roughly a savings of 12.5. I said if we took that 12.5 and we put that into that set aside for the future replacement per year would be good. The replacement, I just factored in at 375. I think Joe said maybe 350, but in 10 years down the road, that may be a little bit more than that. So 37.5 per year is a ballpark number.
Is what we would need to set aside every year for turf replacement.
In 10 years. Yeah.
I think from that, and I think, there's other resources that could come in as well. You could pinch off, if you wanted to, $20,000 from permanent improvement over the course of the next 10 years as well, and just kind of push that aside.
We have
Along-
enough in PI to take care of our bus garage, though. I'm just pushing back on.
And that's why I wanted to show, this was going to be new money coming in to pay for it and not using
I'm sorry to
some of the
interrupt,
existing
Jim.
funds with that. So with that 12.5 that we have from the cost savings of the current field, And what I'm labeling as the hot donor, whatever that amount comes out to be per year, we could set that aside. Today, that's roughly 32.5. So we're short about 5,000 a year. But again, Jim was mentioning some initiatives that they could undertake to shore that up and then some.
Field rentals, I mean, there's rentals too.
rentals.
You're opening that place up 365 days a year that,
So if we get more quicker, my recommendation would be pay down your note. Set aside what you need for the replacement in 10 years, pay that note off quicker if you can, if you have more coming in. So,
Can I ask about the assumption number 3? I guess I had thought about that last time, because that was actually an open question, whether any of the installers that we chose would say, oh yeah, you guys go get your own excavating done, that's fine. Is that a concern that might not be an option?
well, if it's not, so we're going to find that out when we talk to them. They've done other projects in other places before, multiple turf installers have. If the $200,000 in kind is not permitted, then the project doesn't happen. It's over. I mean, it doesn't mean the district has to find those resources. This is just, there could be future hurdles that we just may not be able to clear. The question is, can we clear this first hurdle in order to start to get things moving? And then we'll investigate, the other ones down the road.
so those need to be firmed up. Those commitments need to be there.
Normally the installer would GC the whole project, right? And they're-
Generally,
Yeah.
unless somebody comes in with donations in kind.
Turf
And
guy.
those are the kinds of things that happen generally further out west. Places around here normally, they use their, North Olmsted passed a huge bond issue and the taxpayers paid for everything. Westlake has, an endowment and a foundation and people just wrote big checks. I mean, we're beating the bushes on multiple, corporations, and also we have a group that's going to donate money. The places further out west, they own concrete companies and Western Ohio-ish is what I'm saying,
Tim, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to talk briefly about 2 items that potentially need to be considered too. And I think that would be generated from the engineer's report. At that time, they would most likely do soil borings on the field to see the condition of the soil. And so obviously what that yields, the difference that can make is that we may be required to do some kind of a stabilization of that field in order to make sure that that base stands up to what it is expected to be stood up to. So of course, that has the potential of adding money if it goes to that direction. The only other issue that I have right now, all 4 of our corner drains on that field basically go into a ditch that runs east and west in the woods. I really, really doubt highly that that would be acceptable going forward, because most everything requires either underground retention, detention, or a pond of some sort for retention, just to be able to regulate stormwater going into that ditch. And that ditch, by the way, is the ditch that they made a new ditch to dump water into. So, obviously a turf field is impermeable versus right now it's
Right, grass in the.
It's grass.
The
Part of
grass
the
gets
ground.
in
Right.
and it grows. Or
So
goes in the
those are
ground.
my 2 big concerns, and of course, both could add additional costs that I think Joe has accommodated for some of that potential, but I don't know to what extent at this point.
And that was Joe's comment. I think if I don't want
On
to put
Friday,
words
he
in
talked
his
about
mouth,
a
but
retention pond.
Yeah,
We'll have
and
to
those
do
things we're just not going
Drainage
to
is
know
could
until
be
we
an
go
issue.
through
Right.
that testing process, and that may, put it on hold until we figure out how can we address that part of it there. So that's what in assumption number 6 would be what Tim would be for, surprises from soil testing.
I think there are issues that could kill the project. Somebody decides that they're not going to donate $200,000 of services, or a turf company won't do that. Or the engineer says that there are significant issues with retention and those sorts of things. the thing with, when I say one, so one is killing it, the other is it could delay it, and it won't get in for, the fall of 2021, that, they're going to need to, they'll have that engineer study, and they're going to have to continue to try to raise resources in other ways in order to pay off whatever drainage issues that may happen to be there. I think what I was able to, to gather was they want the idea, can we continue to pursue the idea of getting this, if it only is whatever cost it may be financing. If those other things come in, then that's, fine, but it's the finance thing, because they're asking the district use its financial, backbone in order to say, we have resources coming in from these alternative forms of revenue, and you finance it. They can't do it themselves. And it's district-owned property.
In the initial studies, they're going to pick up the cost of,
Yeah, that would be part of their donation is what it would be, whatever that engineering cost is. But, it may be that they donate that money to school because they can't, it's our land. I mean, we have to pay for the engineer and do whatever it is that we need to do. And as long as, I think as it's under $50,000, we don't have to take that out to a public bid. We can choose whoever we want to use for an engineering project. If that comes back really, really, really bad, then at least we have the report and we know what to do in the future. If it's not so bad, then maybe we can move on to the next step. But they're not going to do that unless there is assurance from the board that the financing is going to happen. Which, that makes sense, honestly.
Sure.
Did you want to say something else, Cynthia, before I have some questions?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm just looking at this, and Joe, if you're watching, next time, please number your presentation. The board knows how I feel about that. So there's a page, savings with turf. So, and, he has that, the labor, the field paint, the AG design, the fertilizer, the watering, the disinfectant, that we pay approximately $24,250 per year. And he's anticipating that the annual turf cost would be $1,400, so a savings of $22,850. Which we said last week, or whenever we met, we're not like banking that. That's still being spent somehow, somewhere,
The $6,150 is being spent somehow, somewhere.
with the labor.
With the labor. The other stuff is not.
It wouldn't be with turf. So are we saying then that amount, Jim, so the 24 minus 6,000 is what we would be saving and then ultimately putting into the new project?
That's what I'm saying.
So that's the 20,000?
Yep.
Okay.
And I reduced that
Right.
bit amount.
Yeah,
there,
and
you
where's
see.
that on here, Brett?
Cost savings / additions.
Okay,
So I'm saying roughly 12.5. There's some unknowns in there.
right,
I
right.
think.
Was that in an attempt to pare out any, like, as we talked about last time we met, if the labor doesn't go away, then it's not a cost saving. So
That-
if your guys are out
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
cutting grass or doing something different with that time, that is not a savings that the district is
It's
banking.
not.
Right, and I discounted that,
All right.
that's altogether, and I also reduced, or increased what our cost would be to maintain that field. I thought 1,400 was like, I have no experience in maintaining turf fields, but $1,400
A lot of money.
seemed light to me, yeah. So I bumped that up a little bit.
Okay.
Especially when he was talking about the sanitation, disinfecting piece of it, to
Okay,
some
so that
degree.
was-
But I think he did a nice job digging into that to see at least what those topics were, what those categories were.
So is that $20,000, is that the only financial ask, Jim and Brett?
My understanding is that is the only initial financial ask of resources that are currently being expended by the district for the beginning of the project. But, again, it's the district's property.
Right.
And so if a field replacement needs to happen, technically it's on the district to do that. However, over the course of 10 years, you're going to get additional fundraising and other different things that are going to happen. So my understanding, the answer to your question would be yes, is
Okay,
that.
and so the other ask is for the finance of the remaining balance?
Whatever is, that residual amount, that could potentially be, it's not going to be more, it would be less based on whatever additional advertisement resources we're able to pull in from now until when that's put in.
So from a financing standpoint, though, is what I would put on the books initially is the cost of the project. Because you're not going to get those savings, day one, year one. It's coming over time. So you're financing roughly $365,000 right out of the gate. Okay, you're going to pay that back with those annual savings and the donations that are coming in.
So we would do what we needed to do, so that the financing would be in OFCS, is named.
Correct.
And whatever, Vitamix and Southwest Hospital and all that, 321, that money's gonna go towards the, whatever, monthly payments or whatever.
Servicing the debt.
And so, obviously, legal will get involved, but what would happen if somehow a company goes under? Or, and I hate to be a what if, but I do not want to get stuck with $300,000 when we're borrowing money to make payroll, kind of to your point. Just a what, like bigger, I hate to say it, but catastrophic picture.
Well, I'm also wondering, in conjunction with that, what is 321's future commitment to this? So I recall when they first were talking, when they first approached us and there was talk between 321 and the JORD that got formed, which I know that they're separate, but there was all these grand plans that 321 would stay involved in the process throughout the years to manage the rental of the fields and things like that. So I guess, again, to Linda's point, if I need to understand further their commitment on raising future sponsors. Otherwise, it's going to fall on the superintendent. Well, yes, I mean, it's great that the superintendent wants to do that. What if we don't have a superintendent that wants to do that?
Shouldn't hire him
Right?
or her.
Well, but you know what I'm saying? But again.
In my opinion, you picked the wrong person.
Well, I get it, but again, for instance, this year we had a lot on our plate, like fundraising for a field turf was low on the list. We were just trying to get through school. So things happen that prevents a superintendent or anybody else in the district assigned to do that, right? And so I would need to understand, I would feel better if we had more sponsorship out the gate than saying it's going to come and someone's going to do that. I need to understand
Let me
further.
say a couple things. First, if 321 doesn't exist in the first place, this conversation isn't happening, and this project probably isn't happening. So 321, there's a person involved that started that group. That group, it consists ultimately of all of your youth sports people in Olmsted Falls and Olmsted Township, all of them. We could say like, wow, if so-and-so, and let's forget the COVID year, resigned as the president of the Olmsted Falls Athletic Boosters, God, what's going to happen to the athletic boosters? Well, I mean, they're going to raise $250,000 annually because that's what the athletic boosters do. So it's not necessarily a person, but an organization, and that athletic commission of 321, of which is an extension of that, and quite honestly, that group of, of our younger parents advocated for the creation of an athletic commission. This is a community where people move to, and they move to with young families, and so it's not a person. I mean, that's going to continue to exist. I mean, so for me personally, I'm not necessarily afraid of that. I'll say this as it relates to, what if this, the next superintendent or whatever. Do you know how much money my counterpart in Strongsville had to raise? Zero. Because he had other people involved with it. Well, eventually, I guess I'll say this, and I've had conversations with you, Mrs. Newman, about this. I don't intend to leave and to go anywhere. So, I know you got me for at least another 3 years, and depending upon how things go, hopefully a little bit more than that, quite honestly. There are people that are passionate about having a turf field, and I'm not going to say that it's just athletics, because it extends well beyond athletics. You have a turf field, that's going to get used by athletics, it's going to get used by the community, it's going to get used by band. I mean, there are going to be multiple people that are going to do that. And, you know, what happens if somebody, you know, leaves? I mean, I don't know. What happens if Vitamix leaves and moves to Japan? I mean, there's going to be a lot that's going to happen to Olmsted Falls. I mean, what happens if there's a sinkhole under the high school? I mean, there's a lot of things that you can what if, and I understand that it's your job to ask those particular questions. I get that. I mean, I'm not here to kind of put, you know, the board in any kind of like weird place, but I am going to advocate strongly for this because this is a community project. I understand that, you know, while our athletics and things focus on 7-12, this is a K-12 project. $360,000 seems like a lot of money if you're buying a house, but overall, in a $55 million budget over the course of 10 years, it's not a lot of money. Sorry, it's not, and if you disagree with me, that's okay. But in my opinion, it's not. Over 10 years, you can figure out how to find that. If everybody bails, then you got me. I mean, if all the sponsorships, like if First Federal of Lakewood and Vitamix folds up, and Ganley, Subaru, and Southwest Hospital disappears, you got me. I don't have a response to that. I mean, if the economy crashes and we all turn into zombies, you got me again. I mean, I don't, you know,
I'm not concerned down the road, I'm just concerned about the financing.
financing is essentially the money that's coming in we're going to pay for. But you're right, if those evaporate, then it's over. But show me a circumstance and an example of where that evaporated and the school district couldn't do that. Places like Strongsville are meanwhile getting $3-4 million all the time. Olmsted Falls has not, because we haven't tried it. We haven't asked for it. And we're in the process of doing that. And I guess, and I appreciate, the superintendent and the superintendent's time. I think one of the primary responsibilities of the superintendent is advocating for the community, and K-12 as well. And good, bad, or otherwise, in Olmsted Falls, unlike places like Lakewood that have a recreation department, guess who the rec director is? It's kind of me, in some ways. I mean, that's just the responsibility that you shoulder. I may not necessarily be at the rec facility, but I mean, we own everything. Right. And I think as a result of owning everything, we can either say sorry, or we can try to just manage it and partner with our young parents and others and make it happen. 3-2-1 is not going to manage the field, nor do I want them to.
Right.
I mean, that is on us. I mean, that's going to come through us. Is that additional workload? Yes, it's additional workload. I will take that additional workload and we will figure out a way in which to schedule that field 365 days a year, because it'll be worth it. That's my opinion. So,
I have another question. I think the scoreboard, we only finance that over 3 years. And
didn't
that's-
finance it at all.
Not finance, I mean, to pay ourselves back. Didn't we do that do we know?
I'd have to,
The way in which
I
the
didn't think
former
it was-
treasurer set that up was pretty interesting, and we're working through that.
Oh,
Okay. I was just going to comment, I think that we need to be really transparent about that here in this analysis, because I don't think it's done yet.
That's
I
not
don't
paid
think
off.
it's done, but I
Right,
think
it's not
this-
paid off, and so what.
It's not paid off yet, but.
Right, and so we're shorter than we say we are here, I think. And I know that you acknowledge that up front. I feel like I'm yelling. Am I yelling? I'm sorry.
I mean, you have
I'm
these
not
masks-
angry.
You have these masks on, it's hard, I know.
But yeah, I
I'm
feel like,
yelling.
No,
because
it echoes.
okay, so I'm sorry. So I would like to have that answered, because here's where I got uncomfortable with this discussion. And that is that, this is something that a lot of people in the community want, and it's something that you want. And I understand that, and I fully appreciate that, and I want to be able to do it because it's something that people want to do. What I don't want to see us do is say, and it's no big deal financially, really, because in the scheme of our full budget, 340 isn't that much. Meanwhile, we've borrowed money to make sure that we can pay payroll. And so I just want to be careful about our, saying things like that's not a lot of money, because it would have made a big difference in our year-end cash flow had we not, had we had another $340,000, we would have been pretty happy about that at the end of June,
Sure.
right? So it would have made a difference there. So that still is a decent amount of chunk of change. And, and then the other place I got uncomfortable is saying, well, we could take this out of PI. Well, we know that our PI at $550,000 a year is not nearly as much as it needs to be for us to take care of the facilities that we need to take care of so that we can run a good district. And so, I just get uncomfortable with saying we can take some of it out of there when we already have been very upfront about the fact that we don't have enough there to keep, the buildings in good shape. And so, given our financial condition, this concerns me, and I think we need to be, really know what it is that we're short. And I appreciate the aspiration of getting, another hot donor of 20K over 10 years, but the reality of it is we don't have it, right? And so I would like to just see a really transparent view of here's what we're really short, here's what we would be financing, and at this point, we don't have donors to, and it's probably more like, I don't know what it's going to be depending on the scoreboard situation, but it's more than $5,000 a year. And I appreciate your analysis, Brett. This is very helpful to me.
And remember too, at the bottom of that is including the cost of replacement 10 years down the road too. So-
Which we've said from the
so
beginning,
I think we should.
we have to do in order to do it, right? Because if you can't take care of it, then we're going to be in trouble. So I appreciate the analysis. I just want us to be very, very transparent with ourselves and everybody else about what we are short on and what would have to be raised in order to make it happen. I'm not saying that I object to going forth and, if there's energy around doing the engineering study and, seeing what the actual project would cost, we need to know that, right? So I'm okay with getting started and seeing if you can get real donations or commitments for donations in kind and do more work to try to get more donors on board. I just want us to be really upfront about what it's going to cost us and not be double counting where we're putting any money, that kind of thing. Not that we would do it intentionally, but just because we want this so bad and, we forget that we already said we were going to pay ourselves back for the scoreboard and so on.
Couple things. I don't think it's fair to ask 321 to pay for an engineering study without committing to the project, so I wouldn't ask them to do that. I don't think that's fair. Secondly, I guess I would ask, if it's a $400,000 cost or a $340,000 cost in totality, does that change your mind? I understand the accuracy of numbers, but let's pretend it's between, you spend the time determining whether or not you're 5,000 off, 5,500 off, or whatever, and it's not a matter of me not caring about precision. If you're gonna quibble over $50,000 over the course of 10 years, what are we doing? I guess is my question.
I guess my comment is, I don't care how much it is, as long as it's not coming out of the general fund.
Right.
I don't care if it's $1 million, as long as OFCS is not, at the end of the day, stuck with it after we borrowed money and laid off 20 people and got by fiscal '21 by the skin of our teeth, Like, I can't in good, and people are still complaining about passing at 8.9.
Sure.
And look at our taxes. Truthfully, I don't care what the cost is, as long as it does not affect what we have now and it doesn't affect the voters. That's my bottom line. I don't care about not that I don't care about $50,000, but you're right, it's gonna be somewhere in that. So, short of that $20,000, which we were spending anywhere, I don't wanna see anything else come out, for the initial project, I don't wanna see anything else come out of general fund or PI to do this, just because we don't have the assets to. Now, if we were 9 million plus, like
Oh, I
some of these
understand.
districts, and we had what Avon has and Strongsville has, it would be a different picture. I just don't want to cry poor to everybody and then say, but we're gonna this. So yeah, to me, that makes no difference, Jim, what we borrow, just that, we know that this is what we're willing to put into it, what we have right now.
I
Yep.
think, if I could say something, nobody has a crystal ball, right? And so, we don't know where our finances are going to be in the next year or so. Being that we're going to be in a new budget cycle with the state, and it could improve, or it could not. We don't know that, but, with recent comments and money coming back from the state to help out, it seems like maybe it's going to be more favorable to public education. We are going to close on our property, in May that we sold, and so that's $1.2 million. And that's going to significantly help us out. And so I don't want to, again, I also think that we don't want to miss an opportunity, right? To do this when where it seems like it's the right time, but maybe not the right time, but is it the right time based on, is our financial picture going to improve? Our financial picture has already improved. We've made it improve, This past fall, we looked at additional cost savings throughout our budget. We didn't lay off any more staff, but we looked at cost savings throughout, our finances, and we came up with more cost savings. So, I don't think that our finances are going to go backwards. They're only going to improve. And so does that help us to understand and feel better about, yes, we can't write a check out of our general fund right now, but yes, we can do it through this finance.
$1.2 million or whatever, that's a month's payroll. I mean, that's not significant in my eyes. It buys us another month. When our ending balance at the end of a fiscal year is whatever, what do we say it's supposed to be? 7.5? When our ending balance is 7.5 or 5 million at the end of a fiscal year, then I feel good.
I don't think we'll get to that for at least 2 years.
Right. So that's why we're
I
better, but
don't
we're
think,
not
I don't
great.
think that I don't think we'll see that kind of, I don't think that'll happen for 2 years.
So that's why I don't think
It might
we're
take
going in
longer
the right
than that.
I don't know
direction,
if
but
that'll
we're
ever
not.
happen.
No, I agree. It probably might not ever get back to 7.5 million, but 5, I think will at least take 2 years. I don't know, this is a difficult decision.
So Jim, would you, so the study, does anybody, I would have no idea what something like that would cost?
Joe said engineering and permits, $30,000 to $40,000. I have no idea.
So that would roll into,
Well,
Tim, do you have any
I'm
idea?
going to ask this as well, I guess, and I don't know if anybody from the trustees are watching, but one of the asks needs to be, this is something for the community. They need to waive any and all fees that they have. They got $155,000 from this school district for fees that other school districts get waived.
Really good
So,
point.
so I'm going to
That's an
ask them that,
outstanding
and I'm going to
point.
ask them publicly that they need to waive whatever fees are associated with this project. And they do not recreate in the community, and it's their responsibility, both the falls and the township, to be part of recreation. We are the recreation group. That's, I think, a reasonable ask for them to give,
That's a great point.
and that'll be publicly asked.
Phil and Jody, do you have any questions or comments?
How close, we are having meetings with Southwest?
We had meetings with Southwest, we're waiting to hear back from Al. You guys understand what that is, right? I sent you the,
Yes.
what that ask is. Okay.
That's Al, who was on your committee,
It is.
strategic
Yeah.
planning? Or is he on the,
Al's on a couple few things
Oh,
for
He's on
us.
key
so
committee.
that's the same gentleman who we've met a couple
Yeah.
times? Yeah.
Yeah, he's done a few things with us. So, you know, I mean, yeah, you don't know. I mean, he may come back and go, look, it's a really bad time for us, because, you know, one of the things that they get from his branch are elective surgeries, and elective surgeries have been down,
Right.
but elective surgeries are going back up. So, you know, Al's right-hand person, Kara, is also an Olmsted Falls alumni, too. If you graduated in 1980, you may know who she is. I forget her last name.
I do know her, yes, I
Yeah.
know her as well.
But so let's say that this magically appears, then that's 200,000 out, off of the top of the project that we would
Off
not
of
have to
365,
finance then.
correct.
Well, you're not going to get $200,000 right away.
Well, but I mean,
No.
we're
For
not,
me,
Yeah.
okay. Yes, it will go towards the project of the field. That just fell into our lap.
It would be.
For me,
right
it
there.
wasn't, this
Okay.
project wasn't contingent upon getting that, but that
Right.
would be an additional set of resources, because that ask was a $50,000 or $60,000 upfront, and then a pay of $150,000 over the course of the next 7 to 10. And within that 7 to 10, you're going to get renaming of the field, and a few other different potential things. The cost of doing business as far as the gold partnerships are going to all go up. In there, the scoreboard will be paid off, you know, in 3 years. So there'll be other resources that are gonna come in and go, you know, to things like that. But yeah, as far as that cost, that would help significantly.
And perhaps I know that it could be a difficult time for some people, but 150 families have volunteered. I'm sure a lot of them are the $1,000 that most of us have done. Maybe it's time to reignite that mission.
Well, I think I mean, there are things that you guys know in the community, because some of you are part of that group. Our own financial woes stopped. They halted their fundraising because there were things that were
Right.
happening. And then you have obviously a pandemic that happened
Right.
as well. I think
But if
if
it's
something
that
like,
close, if
Yeah.
people could really,
well, I think
You know?
that Joe indicated that, you know, if you're a couple $10,000, $50,000 away, I mean, I think if the board would say to move forward with this particular project, it's going to reignite, I think, people's interest
Right.
in fundraising. I mean,
Yeah.
you could get the soccer association, the football group, and the baseball association writing checks. I mean, when they're going to rent the field, I mean, they're going to pay for it. They don't get that for free. And they're going to want this to keep going. So that's a group, obviously, that, I mean, there's a lot of people that are involved with that. I mean,
Right.
those are your youngest
Yeah.
and most supportive families.
or even independent, you know, family people donating. They're
Could be.
100, 500,000, whatever
You get a
they're
car
able
from
to do.
Serpentini that's donated too, you know, and you're selling tickets for $20 a piece or something like
Right.
that, that'll raise $30,000, $40,000 for you as well.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of different things that you could go and try to, you know, to do to help chip away at that. But,
Right.
you know,
Not to reopen a point of this that might be closed, but are we putting too much emphasis on the future replacement cost as a part of this overall? I mean, I know it's prudent to plan for. It's the most prudent thing to do, right? But is it a necessary, I don't want to just kick the can down the road and say, we'll figure it out in 4 or 5 years.
No, I mean, I'm going to say for me, the replacement cost and the largeness of that number, which is a heck of a lot smaller than the initial number to buy it, it isn't a number that concerns me because I think it's a number that we can maintain and figure out over a 10-year term.
I agree.
You know, future partnerships that I would go out, and you would have number of different youth groups that would go out and to try to do that as well. Then you're really tapping into your network of people to say, we need contacts to be able to go out and get additional resources because we don't want to be in year 9, maybe looking for an additional $100,000. We want to get that done in the first 5 years and essentially have that banked. I mean, that's what my goal would be. You know, I think that's where your sports commission comes in that they recently started as well. I think that helps because it's a school and it's a youth organization. They would help do that.
I like the fact that it's been included in here because it's just part of the upfront commitment. If we say that we're committing to turf, then we have to be committing to that ongoing replacement cost. And again, I'll say, yeah, 375 and a, $50+ million budget shouldn't scare us, but how many years have we delayed buying a bus in the past when we have financial issues, right? Because there's 150,000 that we don't have to spend, right? So it can become a problem. So I just, to get back to your point, Jim, that you made of, am I quibbling over $40,000? I don't care what the number is. I want us to have a really good, clear analysis on what's been raised, what do we have available, what still needs to be fundraised. And I don't care if it comes from families, I don't care if it comes from Southwest, from Serpentini, I don't care. I don't want it coming out of our general fund. Right now, I think that is a public relations nightmare. With the levy that we've passed, the fact that we've had a reduction in force recently, and I just think that we need to be able to say, hey, this is not coming from the general fund. And, yes, we're financing it over time. We think it's the right thing to do, blah, 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 but it's being funded through donations, some of which we have in hand and others of which we're very confident
Agreed.
will come. So that's where my head is.
Thank you.
I mean, I do think that there is a way to talk about it, for sure.
So I guess, what do you need from us? And are we gonna make, I know we're not voting on anything, but do
Right.
you need us to say, let's move forward,
Well,
let's
yeah.
this?
It sounds like we do need a little bit, again, we appreciate the numbers now, Brett, but again, if we could get a little bit more clarification on where we are at with the scoreboard purchase. Maybe it can't be figured out,
Oh, no, it can't be.
and if you,
We got it.
okay, I'm sorry. Well, again,
Right.
if it sounds like it was odd the way it all shook down,
It
that's
was.
okay. That's funny, actually, not really, but to me it is. So,
And my intent is to get that out to you tomorrow and that.
That'd be great.
The weekly update. that
yes,
comes
if
out.
we, yes, if we could get, again, what Cynthia's asking for, a little bit clearer picture, and then I think that we can, get back and, be able to say, yes, we're comfortable moving forward or not. I mean, for me, there is absolutely no question in my mind that turfing the field would be good for our community. There is no question in my mind about that.
Questioning that.
And the only people that have the ability to do that is us. And so, do I think that it's our responsibility to do that? Maybe. I mean, these are voters that vote for our existence and our operating expenses. There's also a huge number of people that don't have children in the school district. But again, there is going to be more housing coming here. I mean, this whole thing on Lewis Road is going to happen. I mean, and there's going to be houses and kids and more kids. And there's, and this stuff is for kids, for sure. So I'll just, I'll close with that. So,
Holly, can I just clarify that I don't, I can say that I'm okay in the spirit of moving forward. I don't need to see his revised analysis because again, it's going to come down to, I don't know,
Can you get that donation? Is there,
Right, I just
a
want-
burial ground underneath our
Right.
field?
I wanted
Those
to
kinds of
be
things.
clear on, is it a $500,000 gap, is it a $400,000 gap? I don't need to know that before saying, hey, I support moving forward with having the engineering study done to know what this whole darn thing is gonna cost, right? Because that's gonna affect that end number.
Because that's the big unknown.
That's probably the
in my
biggest
mind.
thing out there, right?
Yeah.
I would
So I don't
say,
need to wait for, personally, I don't need to wait for another meeting for my
Yeah.
part to say, I think we should. I just want to know that at some point, when we have that in, we know what donations we have or we don't have, we know where the scoreboard stands, that we're going to have this number that needs to be fundraised, and whether that's a combination of 321 and our superintendent who's good at doing this stuff, I don't care. Anyway, that's.
Yeah, there was
that's where I am.
never, I want you guys to, there was never an intent on my part to say that we ought to go and plunder the general fund in order to kind of put
Right.
turf on the field. It's
Right.
never
No.
that. It was, how can we partner with a community group? Then how can we partner with businesses around and really get resources generated? There will become a time when the district will need to use its own resources in order to, update, replace a piece of property that it owns, and that, like every other district. But the initial purchase of it will not be that, going into the general fund to do that.
I agree with Cynthia. I think we need to do the engineering, the soil study for sure, or whatever that is. I think we need to do that. Because we won't know until we
And
do
it's
that.
not just a soil study, right? It's really engineering of the project to
Yeah.
know what drainage needs to be
Yeah,
done
yeah,
and
yeah.
The way
scoping
that
it
that
all
moves
out.
forward is the board tells me, I go back to 321 and I go, the board is willing to move forward with this project, knowing that there may be things that stop it, that are associated with donations in kind and engineering and things. And then, because that was the ask, is like, tell me that you're gonna,
Tell me I can keep going.
but yes. And so then my response from what I'm hearing is, yes, you can keep going. And now what we need to do is to get Joe to write us a check for $100,000 and then move forward with this particular project and find an engineer to do these things. That's what I'm hearing.
Yes.
In the meantime, I will continue to try to get resources, and Brett will take the ball of Twisted Twine and
Untwisted.
untwist it.
I agree.
It's actually really kind of like the kitchen utility stuff drawer.
The drawer.
You need to organize it. It's really what it is. It's not really more of a tangled, it's really more unorganized.
Does everyone feel good about that?
Absolutely,
Yes.
Yep,
yes.
okay. Jim, we're clear?
Crystal.
Okay,
Feel good, I appreciate it, I appreciate the debate.
just making sure. Sometimes I think we can be a little
well.
vague and. I
No,
don't
no,
wanna be vague.
no, I appreciate it. And like I said, Brett and I are gonna partner together and work on that stuff. Of what's raised, what's available, and how short we are.
Yep.
And those questions will continue to move forward, or we'll answer those with figuring out what the next steps are as it relates to the engineering part of this. Okay.
Okay, we look forward to future updates. Okay, so Jim and I had talked, and Brett, I was there, were you there? I can't remember. Onboarding needs of newer board members, right? So when Jody came on, like, literally, she like jumped into the fire and it was all finance and that was it. And then Brett's here and it's still kind of been a lot of finance, without other stuff. And so, I don't think, it's my opinion, that I don't think that the board has a great idea of like how to onboard new members. And that's something that I think that as a board, we should work on for future. You know, I went to an OSBA thing once. I think Joe Bertrand went with me, and they talked about there's boards that have handbooks and that the board creates for their own specific board, and this is, you know, what you do, and this is how you onboard, and blah, blah, blah. And we have none of that. So I think it's important to have a short or whatever discussion tonight about what the needs are of the newer board members, or what they think their needs might be, or if any of the more senior board members have like, hey, I think you need to do X, or have you done this, or have you not? You know what I'm saying? So we can make sure that we haven't missed anything. I know it seems like an afterthought with you, Jody, and it is, of course, but we didn't mean to do that intentionally. You know, I mean, I remember when Linda and I onboarded, I don't know what I was doing, but, and there was no handbook back then either, but we just kind of made our way. So.
Have either of you attended OSBA's new board member orientation?
No.
Okay. Those come in, and those are things, I think that probably we all get, I know I get them, but that's, for me, that would be step one, that you ought to go to that. And the cool thing is now, you don't have to go to the ESC at like 8 o'clock at night or whatever it is that you guys, I don't know if it's that or not, I mean, you know, that's hyperbole, but really, it's virtual, I think, and there's got to be a new one that's coming up. So that's the, I don't know what they call it, but like boot camp for new board members, I think is what it might be called.
Did you use something like that, Jody, ever?
I don't remember. I feel like
I
I'm,
remember the painful experience probably, because it's got to be a little painful, but it's necessary. I think.
They have those before you even run.
Yeah.
Like, what am I getting into? And I went to 2 of them to say, what am I getting into? However, Holly, with that in mind, I gotta believe OSBA has a generic
They do.
binder
Yeah, they
that
do,
could
yeah.
at least give us a start, and then we add the specifics to Olmsted Falls.
Right. So they have,
And some of it is just, I mean, they say you have to be on the board 2 years before you really like even know what to ask, which is true. You see how it runs and who the players are and that type of thing. So nobody expects any new board member to know stuff. But for me, it was really meeting with each administrator one-on-one, and they were really prepared, I felt, on this is what's important, this is how I run my building, this is finances. It was extremely helpful, because there's just so much.
we started to do that. We started to talk about setting that up, and then
COVID happened.
COVID blew the
Yes.
world up. So,
Right.
I mean, I know that was part of the discussion from the time that I started until things stopped. So
right.
I do think that would be helpful.
Yeah, that sounds great.
So so to start, I'll work with Debbie Fallon. I can do this. Like Debbie in the past has ordered like books, the set of books, like you get like a finance book, you get like your relationship with the superintendent, your relationship with the treasurer and stuff. And it's a set of books that they have for like new board members. And Debbie can order those. And then she can also let you know when is the next like new board member boot camp type thing. I know that they have,
I just saw one come through.
Usually, they're
I
very
have not seen
prominent.
anything from OSBA on
I
that.
got one, and I thought of both of you, as a matter of fact. I knew we were going to have this discussion. We may have missed it, but it's a rolling kind of thing that happens often. We actually pay them $9,000 annually, so
Yeah.
could probably even get, in the age of the Zoom and the Google Meet, kind of a 411 or an upload from them to you guys in a joint session.
Board member 101, I'm just looking at the last
Yeah.
Jeff Chambers OSBA briefcase.
Oh, maybe it
that
was in
came out.
there, I haven't read that yet.
I think I got the briefcase, those are the
I
email.
think that's where I saw it.
And then
I
they
saw
have,
it.
if you
Okay.
click in there,
So-
it's a nice document, and it shows all the upcoming virtual trainings that are happening.
Would I have done some of that at the conference I went to? They had the new board
Yeah,
member
they put-
track.
Yes, yeah, right, because you.
I think there's the stuff that's going to come from the OSBA as it relates to the books and information that Holly's talking about, and then the virtual thing, and then there's the other part, which is really meeting with Kelly and I and answering any question that you might have about anything, and then meeting with the treasurer to ask financial questions. And then if you want, what we can do is to schedule sort of a, I mean, we used to do those in person because it's nice because you get to go into the building and walk around and like, or you could do it virtually, and that would be with the principals and things. The difficulty with that, and we'll have to figure it out, is they're running on empty a little bit right now with things. So we may have to figure out how that is gonna work. But that would be I think would be helpful.
Yeah.
Meeting with Tim, obviously, and
Absolutely.
going over to the bus garage and like seeing that, talking with Heath and having him show you around there, so you just have an understanding of how things go down. You can do all that stuff. You just tell me what it is that you want me to work on scheduling, and I will do whatever it is that you feel needs to be done. Mrs.
Right,
Newman.
right, it's been odd because of COVID, right? That's been the problem, the biggest problem, is that. And so, right. Okay, so I think next step should be, we'll order these books, and again, like, I never read them, but I have referenced them. Truth be told, I have referenced some of them. So at least you'll have them. And then I think it would be helpful to do a webinar or whatever they have through OSBA for a new board member. And then, I mean, well, it doesn't seem like we're almost done with the school year. We really almost are done with the school year. And so, yeah, but as things, once we get back full-time in person and we get established with that, then we can, whatever you guys need then to, if you want to go out to the buildings or whatever.
Then it'll start to feel a little bit normal, I think,
Yeah.
when kids are back and things, yeah.
Are you guys good with that?
That sounds
And again,
great, yep.
if there's more that you need, like immediately, then you need to say, this is what I need immediately. I mean, I feel bad, like Brett, you came on and we hired a treasurer. I mean, it's just been insane. This is not normal in
Well,
any
that was
way.
an outstanding learning thing. If you want to know
Great.
what a treasurer does, hire a treasurer.
Yeah.
Like now you guys really, I mean, we didn't
Yeah, you don't
obviously
get
touch on
always that
everything.
opportunity to hire one of the two.
Exactly. That was
Right.
outstanding experience.
Right.
You know, like you're like, oh, you do this, you do that. That
Right.
was almost like reading a book in itself.
Yeah, for sure.
From a central office perspective, I mean, we will be here to meet with you guys whenever, and it may be best to probably just start there. And just kind of, you could come in if, you want to do, I like to do those things
Like
face to face anyway, rather
Right.
than, and we could do that.
Like, I remember when I was the first board member, I didn't know that, like, the principals report to Kelly, like, not, I didn't know that.
Well, by electricity, they report to me.
Well, but you know what
yeah,
I'm saying.
Kelly evaluates.
Right, yeah, I didn't know that when I first was a board member, and, right, and there's a lot of acronyms of stuff, and what do they mean, so, okay.
Especially with your kids being young.
Yeah,
You've
your
already
kids are
been up
young,
through
yeah.
all the buildings.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
you
we've
need to
been
get to the-
through,
It'll give you a good glimpse into the middle school and the
That'd
high
be great.
school.
Right,
I think.
right, for sure. Okay. Is there anything else on that at the moment?
No, thank you.
Okay, we just, again, I think that it would be nice if we had things written down and, like, this is what we do, and that'll come. It's just always like lower on the list, I guess. Okay, our next, meeting is scheduled for February 18th. Back here. And then, is there any other general board discussion at this time from anyone at the table? Okay. So I will accept a motion to enter into executive session at this time. We are entering into executive session for item number 2, to consider the purchase of property or the sale of property if premature disclosure of information would give an unfair competitive bargaining advantage to a person whose private interest is averse to the general public interest. Dr. Lloyd, you can invite whoever you'd like.
I'd like to bring in Mr. Atkinson for that discussion, and that would probably be it
Okay.
from my side. I think that that's good.
Okay. I'll accept a motion from the board. Mr. Robson, will you please call the roll?
Dr. DeMarco? Mr. Eckenrode?
Yes.
Mrs. Parkowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Tomasz?
Yes.
And Mrs. Newman?
Yes. Thank you, everyone out there in virtual world. Again, when we come back, we will just adjourn our meeting.